Hi, welcome to this week's Dragonblade Authors Unplugged. I'm so excited. I get to talk to Edie Kay and Jude Knight this week. Ladies, thanks so much for taking the time to talk to us.
Thanks.
It's a delight to be here always.
So C.H. Admirand also has a release this week, but she's not able to be with us, but we'll catch up with her. She's got another Duke's Guard book coming out in just a couple weeks, so we'll catch up with her then. But I'll make sure I'll pop the link to her book in the comments as well, so you can grab it if you haven't gotten it already. But let's just jump right in and start with Jude's book, which is Trials of Alaric.
Yes, The Trials of Alaric.
And it's book 8 in a Twist on the Regency Tale series.
And I keep having to try to stop myself and check the name, because it was originally, when I pitched it to Dragonblade, it was The Trials of Benedict. I just liked the way it came together. Yeah. Except that when it came to the point, I hadn't quite worked out that my Lion's Den book, Thrown to the Lion, was going to be published at around the same time as my Twist in a Regency Tale book, The Trials of Benedict. And I had a Benjamin as a hero in Thrown to the Lion, and I had to have him as a hero because he was a secondary character in Hook, Line and Sinker. Mm-hmm. And it was one of those secondary characters that puts his hand up and says, I'm quite lonely now, my sister's married. And so he had to have his story. So Benedict lost his name. I'll have to have a Benedict sometime because I love that name. Mm-hmm. But I went looking for a 3-syllable name that would fit the pattern of the title, because to me, how a title sounds when it's read out loud is really important.
Yeah.
So The Trials of Alaric is about a girl a young woman who is the only child of her father, who is the Earl of an island in the Irish Sea. And it is an island that has been an earldom since time immemorial, since the earldoms, since that island first became part of the English kingdom, and or a Saxon kingdom originally. And so it can be inherited by a female heir. In the whole history of the island, there have been 2 female heirs, and now there's going to be a 3rd. And she needs a husband, someone who will be her consort and who will help her father, the real next heir. He'll help her be mother to the real next heir by fathering that child. So that's the basic background to my heroine. Her father decides, since she hasn't had the opportunity to meet very many men, because there's not a lot of nobles in the middle of the Irish Sea, he'll hold a house party. And at that house party, he'll run a competition, a whole series of tests for her suitors to test to see whether they're fit to be the consort of the Lady of Claddock. Which brings us to the fairy tale behind this one, because of course it's a twist with a twist upon a Regency Tale is the series. This one is inspired by The Princess and the Pea. My hero is coming back from a diplomatic mission to Brazil, where he was sent when he was in disgrace with his family, and he's now in disgrace with the diplomatic mission to Brazil. So he's on his way home when his ship is shipwrecked. Oh, so he's been having a bad couple of years. He washes up on the shore. B, my heroine, is helping her people organize the rescue of those that are shipwrecked. She recognizes, or is told by the sailors, that this one is a gentleman, so she takes him home to the castle, where her mother decides she'll test to see whether he is a gentleman or not, and she tells him he's entering the trials. And people who want to know what is under the mattress will have to read the book.
Well, it sounds like so much fun, and I loved it.
It was huge fun to write, imagining what sort of trials he might, the father might have come up with, writing the riddles, because they do a treasure hunt that has riddles.
Oh,
It
fun.
was huge fun. I love that. I always love the latest book I've done, but I love that book.
Yeah. I always think it's so much fun to talk to an author who's in love with their book in that moment too. You know, it's like, that's awesome. That's awesome. And we still get quite a few of these, don't we?
More, do you mean more Twister books?
Yes.
Yes, well, this is the last one for this year, but I'm almost finished writing Jack and the Beanstalk, or inspired by Jackie's Climb. And my Jackie is just about to climb a Indian bean tree, which is a real thing, by the way, in order to get into the house where her beloved is being held after being kidnapped. He is a harpist, which is also a nod in the direction
definitely
of Jack and the Beanstalk. So I'm having fun with that one too.
Oh, fun. Oh, that sounds great. Well, there's a lot to look forward to with the
yes, 4 more next year, and a Lion's Den and a short story in a collection.
Fantastic. We'll get all kinds of twisted Regency tales.
Yep.
The next book that released this week is Edie's book, and it's In the Money with You, and it's book 2 in the Ladies Alpine Society.
Yes.
2. Can you tell us about this one?
Yes. So this book is the least adventurous in some ways than the other 3. So this is the one that doesn't really have a lot of climbing. This is all about, unfortunately, the money. So they're trying to fundraise to make sure that they have enough money to get up to the Matterhorn for their entire party, because there's going to be 7 of them. So that's quite expensive. So Prudence, who is actually originally from Minnesota, so this takes place in the Victorian era, and she was married young to a much, much older man. It wasn't a bad thing. It just was one of those things that happened. And it was a father's business partner. And then also, even though he seemed very healthy, he died. So she is 20. Yeah, she's 24 and a widow. But because he was also a railroad baron, and she ended up doing business for him in his last years because he was incapacitated, she learned a lot about money, how to raise money, how to invest money. And so she is independently wealthy, which is kind of handy. But the only thing is that she's never been loved. She's never been desired. And she has all these other passions. Yeah, and so she kind of is like, I'm gonna go to Europe and find out what this is all about. And she tries to go to France, but she's like, ugh, I don't actually speak French, so that makes it harder. So she ends up in London, ends up winding up with these ladies, climbs the mountain, and now she's being tasked with throwing a charity ball to essentially raise money. So she gets paired with the accountant to make sure that she has access to the funds and everything. And he thinks climbing mountains is stupid, because why on earth would you do this?
Yeah, I'm with him.
And she goes to the house, and immediately his mother hijacks her from the entryway and makes her go upstairs to see her, and basically says, well, you filthy American, you're not going to get a hold of my Leo. And she's like,
man.
Great, not really looking to get a hold of anybody, thanks. And because she is Minnesotan and forthright and can't hide it to save her life, she just comes out with it and tells the mom, look, I am not going to get married. I want to keep my money. I'm looking for some fun, and that's about it. And so then the mom is like, oh, well, then let me tell you where to go. You need to join the garden club. Meanwhile, Leo and it's like, wait, what? My mom knows. Wait, what? What does my mom know? and eventually gets Prudence down to the study where she was supposed to have the meeting with him. And she immediately sees through his super secret filing system and gets really bent out of shape that she's smart enough to see a code, but it's Morse code. And if anybody has ever dealt with Morse code, she has figured it out. It's not that hard.
Oh,
So
wow.
they kind of have this battle of the minds. And then finally he's like trying to shock her and is like, oh, I heard you're looking for a lover. I'll apply. I'll do it. And she's like, wait, what? Oh, wait, what? So there's a bit of uncertainty, but then they agree to terms. The rest ensues.
Love a good negotiated tryst. I just love a good negotiated tryst.
And we have a whole host of side characters because Leo is not his real name. And his mother is not a fancy lady.
Oh.
All of their money has been made by Leo, invested by Leo, and he is so insecure about his money. This is also a book a lot about money insecurity, having grown up poor, needing to keep it, feeling like there is nothing more important than having that money so that you don't run out of food, or you don't run out of shelter, and to keep his mother safe. Yeah. And so there's a whole bunch of other things that start happening, and his father, who he had hoped was dead by now, shows up in Act 2.
Ah.
So there is a whole lot of family business. There's also a Christmas decorating montage.
Oh, fun.
Yeah, there is lots of party business happening. And of course, we get to the charity ball, which is also somewhat of a costume ball. It's kind of a fun thing. We also have a rival lover nicknamed Eyeball.
Oh, goodness.
Yes. And a lady's maid from rural New York that carries a derringer with her. And and of course,
so much fun.
Yeah, and of course the rest of the ladies Alpine Society who all show up and are supportive and save the day in different reasons and different ways and are just there for each other. So, and they're all prepping to go to Zermatt. So the end of the book in Zermatt. We're moving closer to the Matterhorn. We're getting there.
Oh, cool.
Lovely.
Yeah, the first book was in Scotland as they climbed Ben Nevis to practice. This is the book set in London over the winter. And then the third book is beginning the crimes.
Are there 3 books in this series?
There's actually 4.
Oh, yay. So you get extra round.
Yes.
Excellent.
Yes. There's 4 ladies, 4 love stories, and happily ever afters all around.
Oh, well, it sounds like so much fun.
Yeah.
And unlike Jude and the hero, I kind of think climbing would be cool. So I'd like to read about it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, it sounds like so much fun. And I'm glad we've got 2 more to come. So
Yeah.
The last book that released this week is C.H. Admiran's book, and it is, I have to look at my notes because I'm going to get the title wrong if I don't. It's Rescuing the Lady Sedgeworth, and it's book 3 in the Ladies at the Keep series. And Teach couldn't be with us this week. She'll check in with us later. But if you haven't gotten that and you've started reading the Ladies at the Keep series, you want to keep going, I'll make sure I put the link in the comments so you can grab it along with the other books this week. But ladies, we still have a little bit of time left, and I know both of you have mentioned secondary characters, and I thought maybe we could talk a little bit about how secondary characters play into your story and when they demand their own stories, when they say that they're lonely because their sister is married and they need their own stories, and exactly how you go about fleshing them out and dealing with them in your books.
Sometimes I've actually planned it. The first book and first historical romance I wrote, which was Farewell to Kindness, which was published 10 years ago next month. 10 years ago next month? 10 years ago? No, 10 years ago last April. I'm telling stories now. Had all 6 of the heroes or heroines of the next 6 books in it, and that was planned. Most of my secondary characters, it's been entirely accidental. While I'm writing, I think, gosh, I want to know about his backstory.
Mm-hmm.
And now and again, people have said to me, when are you going to write about who such and such? So those are the 3 ways that my secondary characters get their own stories. But the one where probably the most common is where I am writing, going back to the 2014 again, while I was getting my first novel ready to publish, and it was away at the editors, and time was, and I'd been writing every day, and it just sort of seemed like something I should do. I sat down and in 10 days wrote a novella about which explained how it came about that a baron at the ball, where a particular scene happens, had a wife who knew how to fix on the ballroom floor an invalid's chair that had been sabotaged.
Oh, wow.
So I needed to tell that story.
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea it was even going to happen until I got, the character who was in the invalid's chair decided that dancing would be a good idea, and he had his valet take him out onto the floor with a partner standing on his feet, so that they could dance. And it was all a bit much for the sabotage chair, which collapsed considerably earlier than the villain intended. And so that was my very first secondary character who said, pick me.
I love it too when you mentioned about readers wanting to know stories. I love it when characters connect in a way that you didn't expect them to, and readers like fixate on that.
Yeah.
I want that one. Like I want to know what that one.
That one. Yes.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's so much fun.
It's
Edie, what about you?
Well, I always have side characters that are begging for space. In The Money with You, there's the lady's maid with the derringer.
Mm-hmm.
So she has been with Prudence for a long time. Her aunt was the housekeeper in Prudence's house in upstate New York, and originally just sort of got paired up with her, not that because they were a good personality fit or because she had any experience as a maid of any kind, but it was just sort of scarcity is what scarcity does. It was the end of the American Civil War. There's just not a lot of people to do the things that you need them to do. So you see them. Actually, I have a short story that also features Prudence. It's called Taste Like Diamonds. And it features Prudence when she's a younger woman, when her husband is still alive. And that is the first time we meet this sort of lady's maid sliding in just to kind of help out. And so in this book, years later, Prudence is off with Leo doing things that she doesn't want witnesses to. So what is the maid doing in her off time? What is she up to? How are we filling her time? So I have not written anything specifically about her, but she's been sitting in my mind for a while because I have some ideas about what she's been up to. She is very clearly not interested in men in any way for any reason. And she's very tight-lipped. She doesn't say a lot. She only speaks when it's absolutely necessary. She's kind of a stoic kind of person, but always prepared. And I don't know, I'm very curious I like thinking of her story, how she's classifying herself, this young woman from rural New York who didn't have a lot of privilege or a lot of education. And what she did.
And who accidentally became a maid.
Yes. And what do you do? What do you do when you're in the world's biggest city?
Inquiring minds want to know.
Yeah. And I love seeing things from different perspectives too, because you'll get to see the world of your current hero and through your secondary character's perspective too, which is, I think, very cool.
Yeah, and they have a lot of mutual respect. So Prudence does take her advice frequently because she knows that the maid will not mince words with her. She'll be very direct. So.
I have a joined up world. I write a single Regency world that gets bigger and bigger with each book, and so it's not just secondary characters who want their own books, but secondary characters who wander into become a secondary character in somebody else's book.
Yeah.
And it's and I quite accidentally have managed to write 3 different generations in the same family in this year.
Oh, fun.
That's really cool.
So my Percy and the sincerest flattery is the eldest son of the Duke of Delborough, who was one of those secondary characters that people said, I want to know his story. Mm-hmm. And so his story is Mary Ann and the 12th Night, which is a little story I wrote for my newsletter subscribers and then expanded to put in a Christmas collection this year. And so that's the father.
Very good reason to be on Jude's newsletters list. So if you're not already, you want to go.
Every two months you get a free story. Yeah. And then the when I wrote the Trials of Alaric, the latest one, which is coming out and should come into my box in about 9 hours, there was a secondary character there who was one of the suitors. Mm-hmm. Was there for the trials, and when I was thinking of a name for him, it suddenly realized he was the right age to be a younger son of Percy's.
Oh, cool.
Oh, so I've now got the 3rd generation. Luke Percy has just had his love story told as a secondary love story in the Trials of Alaric.
Oh, fantastic.
So that was so it's I'm thinking of investing in some genealogy software because my world is getting a little bit hard. I have to keep looking things up.
I was going to ask you that, how you keep tracking, because we talk about story Bibles from time to time and how important they are for making sure that people aren't pregnant for like 13 months. I
have spreadsheets and I have a little database and notepad. Mm-hmm. But I just want something to tie it all together, and I think maybe a piece of family tree software would work well, because it's around 50 books now.
That's enough.
Wow,
that's enough to keep track of.
Yeah.
Well, it's enough to lose track of. And as you say, these 13-month pregnancies, I had to figure out whether the Marquis of Delborough, the grandfather of Luke Percy, the father of Percy, had enough time to get married and have a grandson by 2017, and I was actually able to make him a younger son, which was quite convenient.
Yeah, it's so much better when you realize that it actually does work out, instead of this was a son in one book and a daughter in this book, and I did not mean to do that. And the age is not the way they're supposed to be. So it's a lot to keep track of.
Yes, and I find that if something doesn't work out because the dates just don't work, mm-hmm. then you just have to go with it.
Yeah,
the world is the world is the world. Yeah. You can't break canon.
No, because nothing pulls you out of a story faster. I'm like, I will believe vampires. I will believe flying things, but the basics have to work for you to get my willing suspension of disbelief. Things have to follow along in it.
Yeah, and you cannot have a 13-month pregnancy, and you cannot have a 40-year-old. Well, you can almost have a 40-year-old grandfather, but not one with a grown grandson.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Ooh, yeah, that makes it.
So when you're plotting out your series, when you're plotting out your series, do you often find yourselves putting secondary characters in when you need somebody who's a foil for the hero or the heroine, or you need somebody who will I was thinking of that idea of found family and the people who can kind of move the story along. Do you find yourself doing that in the beginning, or is it something that comes up naturally as you're going through the story yourself, or how does that work for the two of you?
For me, it just happens naturally because people don't exist in a vacuum. They always have their person.
Yeah.
Even if it's not their fated mate or their sister or, something like that, you always have someone with you. It's pretty rare for a person to exist completely alone in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, knowing that Prudence was traveling a lot, of course, she would have a traveling companion. Women typically did, whether that was a servant or a paid companion or something. They would usually have at least one female with them at all times. Sometimes traveling with a man as well to, carry heavy things, I guess. But yeah, so I knew that she'd have someone and someone that she couldn't hide things from, because Prudence does hide this business arrangement with Leo from the rest of the Ladies Alpine Society. And it's kind of one of her things where she's like, I don't know if I'm doing the right thing by hiding it, but also I don't feel like sharing and I don't want to be judged.
Yeah.
Because as the only widow, she's the only one that could have relations out of wedlock and not be completely shunned by it.
Yeah.
And it makes the rest of them look real bad. So she has to keep it quiet. Otherwise, she risks having their entire expedition defunded. So she has to keep up appearances, and the best way to keep a secret is to not tell anyone.
Yeah. And then you need some place for her to be able to share it. There has to be a safe place for her to share it. Otherwise, you're in her head all the time. There has to be a place for her to.
And the person who's cleaning up your underwear knows exactly what you've been doing. So you can't hide everything.
It's one of the things that I'm sure is true, that is quite often in Regency stories, is you cannot hide things from the servants.
Yeah. You think
you're living very... I can't imagine living with a dozen other people in the house who are there all the time, coming and going quietly and being ignored.
Yeah.
And yet that was how it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and I was just going to say, one of the things that I also really enjoyed about writing in this book. So I for my day job, I have worked in healthcare. My husband works in healthcare. And of course I have aging parents. And one of the things that for me was interesting is to think about how aging happens in bodies when we don't have the medical interventions that we do now. So for instance, many of my dear family have had hip replacements. Completely wonderful health otherwise, but have required joint replacements just because it wore out, or things happen, you fall, something happens. So Leo's mother has a hip replacement. She's perfectly healthy, but she has difficulty walking. It is painful to walk. So that's why she always absconds with the guests upstairs immediately, because for her, moving around and being nosy doesn't work. So she has to order the servants to get whoever comes to the door goes to her first, because that's just how she works. So it's been interesting to look into I don't know, imagining how that worked back then.
Mhm.
Not have
Yeah.
Yeah.
that of-
Yeah, I agree that we take our own experiences and what we've observed around us um, and feed them in. I'm doing a virtual book tour at the moment, and I'm currently in 3 different places, which is the wonder of scheduling.
Yeah.
And one of the comments that I've made on that is that there's a little piece of my own personal romantic hero in every hero I write.
Yeah.
But how could it not be so? That's my
Mhm.
experience. I've had one lover in my entire life, and I first fell in love with him 2 weeks after my 19th birthday. So,
Oh my goodness.
Wow.
that's my experience.
Oh, that's wonderful. I
Wow.
love it so much.
So that's the and you talk about the hip problems. Well, one of the things that runs through our family is dyslexia, and so one of my secondary characters in One Perfect Dance, my in fact, the youngest son of the Duke of Dilborough is dyslexic, and they can't decide whether he's lazy or crazy or just stupid. But
Yes.
quite clearly he can't read, so it's one of those 3. And so they send him overseas on an extended world tour so he doesn't embarrass the family. And my hero is hired to be his secretary.
Well, in that same vein, one of the her book is next after this, but Justine in the Ladies Alpine Society is definitely ADHD coded. And I've gotten some people either love her or hate her because she is so vocal and loud and very disruptive and not at all British because she just can't help herself. And so there is that. And then Ophelia is autistic coded. So high functioning autistic, but very focused on her agenda. She has things to do. You have to do this in order. It makes her an excellent leader because she keeps them all on task. She's got a goal. She's got ambitions. She knows how to do this. So if you read through my books, they're their personal books, books 3 and 4. But when you read the series, you can see that they are, Ophelia is Justine's emotional support autistic. So I don't know if you have any ADHD or autistic people in your circles, but that is often how it works.
Exactly that setup in my household.
Yeah.
We have
the oldest or the youngest is the emotional support siblings.
Yeah.
We have a son who's has severe frontal lobe damage because of chemotherapy as a baby. He's now nearly 50, but we finally reached the point where he was prepared to help us, I mean, if you have no frontal lobe, you have no decision-making capability. Okay, yeah. Well, I mean, you can make decisions, obviously. You just can't make good decisions. And he was making some really interesting. We experience life, I tell you. But we eventually came up with the notion that one of his specialists gave us the idea of telling him that I was his prosthetic frontal lobe. That if he needed a prosthetic leg, he would wear it.
Yeah.
And if he needed a prosthetic eye, he would have, if such things are now being possible, he would wear it. He has a prosthetic frontal lobe. It happens to reside inside somebody else's skull.
That's a lovely way to say it.
Which is a lot. Which is but yes, that whole idea of having a support person who can do the things you can't do. Actually, what you just said was really, really rude. I know you didn't mean it that way, but that's how it came across. It's wonderful stuff.
Yeah.
It's wonderful stuff. And of course, our ancestors went through all of this stuff. It's not new. We just understand it better.
Mm-hmm. We just now have a vocabulary to call it what it is.
Mm. Yeah. So I have retired as a prosthetic frontal lobe, and one of his sisters has taken over.
It's good you can get some rest.
And also lovely that he's willing to accept that that's something that he needs the same way you would need it if you were any, if it were anything you mentioned.
Yeah, it was a great concept to provide him with. So some people need prosthetic eyes. Some people need prosthetic emotional interpretation.
Mm-hmm.
It's just how we are.
Yeah.
Ladies, this was delightful to talk to you today. I really appreciate you taking the time. I love the direction that everything went. It was completely unplanned. I love where we ended up. So I really appreciate you taking the time to talk today. I'm going to say the same thing I say every week. It's my used sales car pitch, but it's true that Dragonblade books are the best deal on pre-order and release. So you want to make sure you grab them right away. If you don't grab them right away, you can get them in Kindle Unlimited. And I will make sure I put the links in the comments so that if you haven't gotten your copies of the books of this week's books, you can get them now.